Hey everyone, welcome to the shop. We are one step closer to finishing these bows. Since the last video I did finish all of the tillering on all three bows, and I have to say it went really well. I think I got progressively better each time I did it. On the rawhide bow, which I did last, I finished that one in about 3 hours, and I got it to 30 pounds of draw weight at about a 26-inch draw length, and it went really well. The only other thing I did since then is I did go ahead and shape the handles for the bows, and that's really just a matter of trial and error. It really just comes down to grabbing the bow at the handle, removing a little bit of wood, grabbing the bow, removing wood, and you just keep doing that until the handle just feels comfortable in your hand. As far as the tools that I used, really whatever is at your disposal, whether that's chisels, files, rasps, sandpaper, sanders, orbital sanders, whatever you have. Just a matter of taking the wood down a little bit at a time until you have something comfortable in your hand. I did play around with the shapes a little bit. So on the smaller bow, I did kind of like a softer D shape with a little bit of an indentation for your hand here, and that's actually really comfortable. On the rawhide bow, I went ahead and I put some arrow knocks on either side. I did want this to be kind of an ambidextrous bow, so typically if you have an arrow rest, I'm sorry, not an arrow knock. If you have an arrow rest, it's usually on one side and it's much deeper than either one of these. But I didn't want to sacrifice the structural rigidity of the wood, so I just cut two shallow ones. Whether or not that's worth keeping, only time will tell. We'll see after we take a couple shots with it. But the only thing left now is to put some finish on the bows and to leather wrap the handle. As far as finishing goes, you can use just about anything that you would for a normal wood project. And really, it just depends on what you want. You can go as low-tech as making your own beeswax and mineral oil finishing paste, all the way to a super high glossy varnish or even an epoxy coat if you want. For me, I kind of tend to settle somewhere in the middle. I like a finish that is still going to protect the wood, but is really easy to maintain. And I prefer more of a natural look to it as opposed to a high gloss, but really it just depends on what you like and what you want to do. Since these bows are going to get used a lot, I don't want something that's super high gloss because it's going to tend to show scratches and chips and all that stuff. So what I went with is actually a pretty old school recipe, and it's a really easy finish to apply. It's just equal parts boiled linseed oil, mineral spirits, and a polyurethane of your choice. So I literally just put them in equal parts, mix them in here, and we're gonna wipe it on with just a blue shop towel. So that's really all there is to it as far as the finishing goes. It's really easy to apply. This is a super low maintenance finish. I love using this for simple projects like this. You just wipe it on, wipe off any excess. I'm going to let this sit for about a day. I'll do about 3 coats total. In between coats I will scuff sand very lightly with some 320 grit sandpaper. And then I'll take some just regular paste wax or furniture wax and buff that onto the wooden parts of it, just to give it a little bit more protection. When we do come back to these, I'm going to take some leather strips and we're going to wet form these around the handle and stitch them on, and then the bow is done. And we're back. It's been a couple days. We put some finish on the bows. I put about 3 coats on and a coat of wax. So now it's time to put the handles on. Initially, I was just going to use some strips of leather and wrap the handle, but as I was doing that, I realized I don't have that much sewing thread for the leather left, so I only had enough to do one. So we had to get a little creative. For one of them, I just did a standard wrap with leather cordage. For the rawhide back bow, I did a paracord wrap, and for the canvas bow, we are going to still go ahead and do the leather wrap, so we'll get into that now. So I've got the bow in the vise here, and because it's already got finish on it, I wanted to just protect the area that we're going to be working on, so I just took some cellophane wrap and put that around there just to protect it from water damage, but that'll come off later. So I've had some leather soaking in warm water for about 10 minutes, and that makes it really nice and flexible and pliable, and it'll allow it to form to the contour of the shape of the handle. So what we're going to do is get the leather pretty much centered on the handle where we want it. And then we're going to pull it back so that it's relatively even. And I wouldn't worry too much about this. We're going to cut a lot of this extra stuff off. What's important here is that you just pull it as tight as you can to try and get the leather to start to take the shape of the handle. And once you kind of have it nice and taut, we're going to take some spring clamps and we're going to just pinch that down. And again, it's not super important that this be perfectly even right now because we are going to trim the leather after the fact. The only thing you want to make sure is that the seam is kind of centered on the back of the bow. And again, that you got this pulled nice and tight. And you can sort of see that it is taking the shape here of the handle. Let this sit overnight and the leather should have dried and actually retained the shape that we had it clamped in. Let's see what we got. Yep. So now you've got kind of a little hollowed out form. You can even see the little divot here for that spot on the handle. So now all we're going to do is cut away all this extra stuff, make sure that our seam right here lines up, and then we can start putting in the holes for the stitching and tie this bad boy up. Just take a really sharp knife and start scoring right along those clamp marks.
We'll do that on both sides here.
So now we're starting to kind of get this shape defined a little bit. And each time I cut this, I'm going to put this back on the bow and just see where the seams line up, how much of a gap there is. You want to try and get them pretty close to being closed up, but give it a little bit of room because you know that once we put the stitching on there, this leather will stretch a little bit. So I don't want it to bunch up. I'd like it to be nice and flush when it meets up. All right, so we've got our leather cut to size. I went ahead and I put all the holes in. Unfortunately, I don't have an actual leather punch, so I just use a compass to space everything out, and then I just use an awl to very lightly punch the holes through. So it may be a little bit of a challenge getting the needles through, but we'll see how it goes. So from this point on, we're just gonna do like a cross stitch all the way down, tighten everything up, and that should be it. So here we go. And there we have it. Not too bad. It took a little bit of finagling, and I had literally just enough string. I only had a few inches left on each piece, so that worked out pretty well. But all in all, I think it looks pretty good. I think all I'm going to do is just put a little bit of like leather conditioner on here to soften this up, and it's good to go. And there you have it, folks. Just like that, we've got 3 completed bows. How cool is that? We've got the little baby bow, the little 15-pounder with leather cordage wrap. We've got the rawhide bow with the paracord wrap. This one was, I think, 30 pounds. And we've got the canvas bow with the leather handle, and this one was 25 pounds. So that's it, folks. That was really, really cool. Now, the only thing left is to test them. That'll be next time.